Vandana, would you tell us more about the internships available with your program?
Go to the Navdanya website, navdanya.org, and go to the Earth University pages, and you get all the details. And for those who want to know what's happening with the whole issue of seed and agriculture and Monsanto, go to seedfreedom.info.
Can you talk more about what communities seem to be needing to go through, focusing on the localization of food over the globalization of food?
In fact, the Soil Not Oil title came out of a keynote I gave for the Transition Network in England. The Transition Town movement really grew out of the concern that climate change was going to be very disruptive, and they realized in England they were 98% dependent on imports. Food, of course, was the first thing they started to talk about in terms of localization. But the brilliant thing is that when you want, in a globalized economy where oil is one pillar, speculative finance and the casino economy is the second, and privatizing the commonwealth, whether it is through patents on seed and patents on life or patents on software, is the third, then local currencies became a very big part of the transition movement. There's a very, very good film made by French activists last year called Demain, Tomorrow. And what they've done is they've traveled the world to look at alternatives. And even though it was made as a documentary, it's a big hit. Millions and millions have been watching it because, most people don't realize so much is happening in the world where people are taking charge. That's the true democracy. That's what I call Earth democracy. Yes. I think we did make a mistake thinking that a ballot once in 4 years or 5 years is democracy. It was a nice delegation of power, but to the extent the people to whom you delegate power are honest to their mandate, it works. When they stop being honest to their mandate, it doesn't. And when, as we've seen in this election, that money mutates and genetically engineers democracy from being of the people, by the people, for the people, into of the corporations, by the corporations, for the corporations, then that democracy is dead, and we've got to invent deeper forms. Beginning with how we live, beginning with how we think, beginning with community, and moving all the way upwards. And it's the local, regional, subnational level that will be the place where many of these transitions will happen.
Hello. Welcome, Dr. Shiva. I wanted to ask you specifically how we work with the soil and the role of the soil in climate change, to say more about that.
Well, come for the agroecology course we do in September. The soil in all the old texts of industrial farming is defined as an empty container. In some textbook, a container to pour nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium from factories into. In some, to hold the plant, as if the plant doesn't know how to hold itself. Ancient peoples knew the soil is living. New science is teaching us the soil is living. And if you start looking at how alive the soil is, it is absolutely amazing. In a cubic meter of soil, 50,000 insects, 12 million roundworms, 30,000 protozoa, 50,000 algae, 400,000 fungi. And my favorite is the mycorrhizal fungi. If you're worried about the stolen elections, remember the mycorrhizal fungi. First, it's invisible. Second, in a cubic inch, there's 8 miles of it. And what is its work? It goes where nutrients are and brings it to plants that need it. And they've done new research where they starved trees of nutrition. And the mycorrhizal fungi went to the trees that were getting the nutrition and carried it to the tree that wasn't.
Love that. Woo!
Thank you. My name is Thomas Price. I'm one of the Eugene Sustainability Commissioners, and that's kind of feels like an oxymoron anymore, because while we have issues of climate change that we have work groups that meet about, no one wants to give up the freedoms of, or what they call their freedoms, of our carbon intrinsic community society. What does the choir here need to do to talk to the 200 to 500,000 people that are not here, who are not taking this serious? How can we mobilize this community to engage the rest of the community in changing their ways? I would love to see a biophilic community here that is rich in understanding. I come from a Native American tradition in Northern California, where we were doing what's now called permaculture for generations. How can we help this community embody those kind of practices and communicate to the ones that are not in this room, who are not already on the path?
Well, you know, the first, of course, you're already doing, I think this has to be one of the most ecological valleys in this country. By choice, people have come here because it gives them the possibility. And the reason I wrote Soil Not Oil was soil is the solution to so much of the problem that oil has created. Not only does it avoid those problems, but it actually reverses those problems. As I mentioned, the whole, 0.5%, 0.4% can deal with climate change. But more than the fact that it can scientifically deal with the whole carbon cycle, the empowerment of working with the soil also means you suddenly realize it's in my hands. Mm-hmm. So in Paris, while everyone was nervous, would they agree, won't they agree? Right till the end, the drama was taking place. I did a pact. We planted a garden of hope, and I did a pact for the protection of the earth and each other. Partly because a few weeks before, they'd had those terrorist attacks in Paris. And in that pact, we basically said, well, the governments might fail us and might fail the earth, we cannot. And that's what the first action is. The second, when I came first to North America to do my studies in Canada, what I couldn't figure out was why on the weekend the campus became empty and people were driving 500 miles to meet a friend or have a party. Because we never have to run away from where we are. When you have community, you don't run away. And the automobile then becomes just a functional vehicle to get you to work, not a vehicle for escape. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, building community, the First Nations can teach the rest. That's the second. Mm-hmm. And the third is creating alternative economies. It's not a luxury anymore. But not in desperation, not in the silly Hunger Games kind of nonsense. Alternative economies, knowing that this short-term fraud on us should phase out. We have a duty to live at peace with the earth and each other.
Yes, we do. Woo.
Hi. I'm pretty concerned about the depletion of soil phosphorus, and I wonder if you have any particular techniques, farming techniques, that you advocate for long-term sustainability in terms of not depleting soil phosphorus. And as a bonus question, I wonder if you think it's possible to have long-term farming sustainability if we don't compost our pre- and post-digestive waste.
Mined phosphorus and the industrial nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium is, like I said, just not even a century old in terms of the idea that NPK is what the soil needs. Soil organisms have an amazing way to produce all of the elements the soil needs, the plants need, we need. There's a very, very good study done, a meta-analysis by the British Journal of Nutrition, which shows that organic foods have 60% more nutrition. And that's because the soils have more nutrition. Now, I'm just looking here on the earthworm, because the whole idea of domination required a rendering of Darwin's work in terms of survival of the fittest. There's a book that Darwin wrote on the earthworm mold. He said by the end of when history is written, evolution's history is written, it may be doubted whether there are many other animals that have played so important a part in the history of creatures. And it produces 7 times more phosphorus than the soil. So I think it is time for humility, which is the other word that's derived from humus, not just human. Humility means we've got to accept nature's intelligence, which was denied for 2 centuries. 2 centuries, nature is dead. Darwin wrote another book where he talked about the root hairs and roots of the plant being the brain of the plant. 2 years ago, they're starting to find out the gut is our second brain. 2 years ago. All the ancient healing systems of all ancient cultures recognize that. Yeah? Ayurveda centered on that. So I think we need a little more humility, little more trust, knowing that by doing the right thing for the earth, which is giving back, and I agree with you. I do think robbing the earth of the recycling of one species, recyclable matter, what you called post what?
I said post-digestion.
Post-digestion, yeah. On the one hand, it's become the biggest source of pollution of so many waterways. And on the other hand, it is robbing soil. And we know there's so many ways, including biogas, through which you can put that back. Now, it's just that you can have decentralized biogas, whereas you have centralized oil refineries of the Koch brothers, and that's the contest right now.
First off, sorry. Thanks for speaking to our community. And my question is, I recently read that some researchers who've been researching photosynthesis have found that there's a protection gene that inhibits the ability of the poor plant to be totally efficient. And so by turning off this protection gene, they can increase the efficiency of photosynthesis by supposedly 10 or 15%. Now, I find this really horrifying, and I'm just wondering if you've heard of this.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
I've heard of it, and I work on the principle plants are intelligent.
Okay. Thank you.
And human beings have often made many errors.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In the GM technology, many, not one successful deployment. BT for pest control has given us super pests. Herbicide tolerance for weed control has given us super weeds. Not a very good record.
So when you spoke earlier of a unified identity, kind of the things that have been going through my mind are that humans, and when I say humans, I typically mean through some sort of spiritual or religious ideals. I broke it down in my head, and the thing is that they all revolve around 2 or 3 things. They're saying thank you for the earth as it is, and they're looking to better the earth, and some religions and some ideals may not be doing that as effectively as others, but if we look at the world as really looking forward to and identifying those as the 2 unifying ideals, then wouldn't we be one step closer? Because that's already what we're saying.
Yeah. So I did talk about unity. I don't talk about uniform identity, because there isn't, and every uniform identity is not just a construct, but a dangerous construct. unity in diversity is what nature is. Unity in diversity is what our human beings, we human beings are. And any major religion that lasts long enough to be called a religion comes with those basic teachings. You give back to the earth. We did the Terra Viva manifesto, but in India we also did a little booklet where we asked people from different religions and different cultures to write what the soil is in their tradition. And you're so right. In every tradition, it is take care of the soil. She's the provider. Give back. And the earth identity is our first identity. It will stop the arrogance of the conquest over the earth. It will stop the grabbing of the earth's resources, but it will also stop the artificial divisions that are rupturing our humanity apart. Because when we are one as earth community, you're also one with other beings. And now humanity will only be able to reclaim its humanity by recognizing other beings.
Good evening, my name is Helle Ruttenclaw. I'm a farmer up from Amity, a little ways north of here, and I agree with you that this is a wonderful valley for growing crops. It's an incredible productive soil we have. We've been on our farm for 25 years, and as you say, soil is the most important gift we have. Soil is what makes our livelihood, and we try our best to take good care of it. And on our farm, we have increased our organic matter and our earthworm activity hugely from when we started. The main reason, or the main way to accomplish that, we've done that is through what's called no-till, so we don't till the soil. And that has been found to be the most effective way that U.S. agriculture can combat global warming is by converting more farms to no-till. An important part of that, in the Midwest especially, is through using genetically modified crops. So I guess my question is, in my opinion, GM is a technology, it's a method, it's just an evolution of the way we've been breeding plants for centuries. And so why take away an important benefit to the soil and to the earth by not wanting to take the good parts we can out of carefully managed biotechnology methods?
Well, no-till in the version of Matsunobu Fukuoka, who wrote The One Straw Revolution, is very different from spraying Roundup. For two reasons. When you start describing Roundup spraying as no-till, you have killed much more than just the plant. And the data's out there on how sick the soils treated and sprayed with Roundup are. You're killing all the beneficial organisms, and they are now being invaded, the soils are now being invaded with pathogenic organisms. If you seriously treat soil as a living system, you don't fragment it into saying, oh, tilling was the problem, I'll solve that, but poison the earth. It's not a solution. No. And we have to look at the soil as well as farming systems in integrity as systems. Anything that passes two tests for me works. The first is the test of systems, interrelationships, interconnectedness, not fragmentation. The second is the test of experience. And I do not think, I've been around so long that I have watched the poor Roundup having to take many incarnations, the latest being climate smart agriculture. So let's just recognize that these smartnesses fade so fast. There's lots and lots of work done that Roundup use for increasing soil carbon actually hasn't.
Vandana, it's been an honor to have you, and I have a gift for you, a seed basket. And I want to ask you something that hasn't, except for what you said in Hunger Games, and it might seem strange, but I am a global humanitarian and educator, and you are one of the leading women teachers that have taught me so much that I do know. But I want to ask you, because you have come here tonight and you share your time and your energy around the world, how people can protect themselves and the country and the places they are at from HARP and other violences against people trying to be peaceful and loving and say, we want something good for ourselves, we want to be good parents, we want to be good communities, without getting lashed at in Star Wars ways. And if you want, I don't know how much you know about that, but I think it's ifa.hawaii.edu shows the cities around the earth that are in collaboration with the HARP and lasers and all kinds of technologies that are meant to protect us from all kinds of things, mostly from outer space. But when a country is saying, I don't want GMO, and it's not just 5 people, it's a whole nation, then you will get a flood, you will get an earthquake, you will get some horrible thing that displaces them, and they are homeless, and they have no home. And it's so hard to have a home. Thank you. If you could let us know what we can do to protect ourselves as we work together.
First of all, we don't protect ourselves through fear.
Yes.
We have to recognize that every use of violent tools without consultation and approval of the people is just one more form of the violence against the earth and people. And that's why we have to build this planetary peace movement, which includes making peace with the earth and making peace with each other. We have to do that by making what is hiding be shown. That's the struggle for truth. Gandhi called it satyagraha. All this only works because it is behind closed doors. Free trade treaties work because they're behind closed doors. Election maneuvering works because it's behind closed doors. We must come out in the open and say, you open your doors too.
One more question. I want to thank you for all your work. This evening you've talked a lot about industrial agriculture and oil and agriculture, but my understanding is that a lot of these problems that we face today, soil decline, spiked population, species extinction, forest decline, these are all things that began 10,000 years ago with the transition from a hunter-gatherer culture to an agricultural culture, is my understanding. And so one of my strategies in approaching solutions is to question organic agriculture, which did a fine job of destroying much ecosystems even before oil came into the question. And so my question is there a solution for handling population issues if we maintain a worldview of agriculture?
Well, this Albert Howard was sent to India as the imperial botanist to improve Indian agriculture, as colonizers always have to. But he arrived and found the soils were fertile. There were no pests in the fields. He said, I'll turn the pests and the peasants into my professors. And he wrote the book called The Agricultural Testament. And in it he writes that agriculture of the Orient, we used to be called the Orient at that time, the agriculture of the Orient is as perennial as the forest. In my country, you can't, in many areas, make out where the forests end and the farm begins. Go to Kerala, go to the northeast. Even in UP, the much populated Gangetic Plain, till the colonial law started to destroy farm trees. Agroforestry was the basis. No farming in the world has been based on annuals alone. They were periphery. And corn and wheat and rice were one among 10,000 crops. Now, it's the destruction of their diversity, the destruction of the perennials, the destruction of the integration of livestock, trees, and crops that has led to the instability. And it would be terribly wrong to imagine all agriculture was industrial monocultures forever. As far as the issue of population growth is concerned, in my book, Earth Democracy, I have a whole section on that. Why did the population explode in Scotland after the Highland clearances, which is what led to the migrations and Nova Scotia and all of that? When the commons and the lands were taken away, and all that people have to survive is themselves and their bodies, not the earth, not what she gives, that's when populations increase. India was colonized by the East India Company 1757. By the early 18th century, they were changing land tenure, uprooting farmers, creating landlords to collect the rents. Half of what was grown by the farmer was given to the British as rents. 1815, for the first time, a long-term plateau of population in India. And we've kept data for centuries. India is a very literate society. Population started to increase. Population increase is not an inevitable biological phenomena. It is a symptom of the same ecological instability that also leads to soil degradation. And wherever there is justice, and wherever there is rights to land, the population actually stabilizes or declines. Read the example of Kerala, which implemented land reform. Thank you.
Vandana Shiva.